You are listening to We Saw the Devil, an investigative and conversational true crime podcast that deep dives into fascinating criminal cases that are solved, unsolved, or ongoing. From America's Lori Vallow to Germany's Armin Meiwes, we examine and discuss the world's most shocking cases. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to follow us online. Check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com and We Saw the Devil on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget, you can become part of the show by backing us on Patreon. Hello everyone, you are listening to We Saw the Devil. This is Robin, and I know that it has been a long time. It's been 2 weeks that we're going into the third week since I put out the last episode, and things are going to change around here. Long story short, guys, is I took on a job and I ended up working between like 14, 16, a couple days, 18 hours a day. And it was not sustainable. I could not, for the life of me, I did not have time to research, to put out episodes, to really do anything, including sometimes go to the bathroom, depending on if I had meetings. So I left the job and I'm now catching up on a lot of stuff. It was basically 2.5 months of 14 hours a day, plus working on the weekends. And unfortunately, it affected the podcast. I am so incredibly sorry for those of you who've been waiting and wondering what's going on. That's what's been going on. I would like to give you guys an update, and it's going to be 10 minutes long. So if you are just like, I don't care what this crazy lady has to say, I just want to listen to the episode, you can fast forward to roughly 10 minutes in. For the rest of you who want to get a status update, where I've been, what's going on, how things are going to change, what's going on with the show, feel free to listen. I'm going to be focusing on the podcast full time. This is going to be a full-time project for me going forward. I'm very excited about that. It's very terrifying. I guess it's kind of on brand for 2020 and 2021 because, as everyone knows, like at the tail end of 2020, my parents got COVID, my mom passed away, and then I had to move across the country from Portland to Nashville to take over their house and their estate. And then my dad got end-stage dementia from COVID, and then he ended up passing away. I'm a workaholic at my core. I am an absolute workaholic. And I figured that, as things were starting to even out, I would just do project management, work from home, get a job. It'd be easy. I could have a work-life balance. And not the case. And as much as I love working, and being a workaholic is not necessarily a good trait to have, but I decided that I would like to do it with something that does in fact make me happy, which is this podcast. I love our patrons. I love the listeners. I love the feedback that you give us and, reach out and ask us questions. So that is what's going to happen, guys, going forward. Funnily enough, on the one episode where I basically made the mask comment on how, please wear your masks and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, hundreds of, nasty emails threatening my life, calling me names, attempting to dox me. Yeah, that put me pretty much at an all-time low. So basically, it's kind of funny where, a couple months ago even, I was like, I can't handle this. I just lost both my parents, and now you people are cursing me out over asking you to wear a mask and wanting to end the podcast entirely, to now here we are in July, and I'm like, nope, this is going to be a full-time endeavor. So what that means is that things are going to change. We will have an absolute schedule from here on out that I can 100% commit to. Episodes will be coming out every Tuesday and Thursday, unless there is absolute off-the-wall Lori Vallow news that just has to come out during that day. Episodes will be coming every Tuesday and Thursday morning, starting next week. And a huge and massive sincere apology to our past and current patrons. Patreon, unfortunately, has been probably the piece hit the hardest from all of this. I mean, going back literally through November. It's really, really, really hard when one person is running all social media accounts, all researching, all writing, all recording, all editing, and then plus a Patreon. So unfortunately, what ended up happening is that it suffered. So what I would like to do is speak directly, those of you who are listening, past and current Patreon patrons. I am behind on the postcards. I am sending those out. For all of you past patrons, if you did not receive something like a sticker, mailing, welcome package, t-shirt, something like that, please, 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 please reach out to me. You can email us at info@WeSawTheDevil. Just make sure that we have your name, your address, and I will send out anything that we did not send to you during that time. Again, sincerest apologies. Life has just been absolutely heinous for like the last 6 months with lots of death, lots of craziness, and it's hopefully starting to even out. And I want to make every single thing right here going forward. And also taking care of people who may have gotten somehow glanced over or was a patron during the time where nothing was actually getting mailed. Again, please, if you are a previous patron, please reach out to us and give me your contact information, what you did not receive, and let's make sure that you get what you were owed. And to everyone else, thank you so much for your patience with everything. Let's just get the rest of the quick housekeeping out of the way. As always, our website is WeSawTheDevil.com. Social media, We Saw the Devil across the board. And guys, also, just so you know, I hired a graphic designer. The show assets, the logo, all of it is changing. I will let you know when, but I'm really, 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 really excited that the show is getting a facelift. I've had a lot of feedback throughout the year that I've been doing this, stating that the cover art is a little dark, especially in conjunction with the name. And I feel you. To be honest with you, when I started this podcast, I didn't think it was going to go anywhere at all. And then it did. And then we had really crappy cover art that I made in Canva as our logo. So that is being changed. I hired a professional graphic designer. They're working on new t-shirt designs, assets for the website, and we're making a new logo as a whole. So all of that, I will be very, very excited to announce when that is complete. If you're liking the show, loving the show, and want to financially back the show, you can do so at our Patreon, which I am going to go balls to the wall on from here on out. And I'm really, really, really excited to do so. A lot more engagement, a lot more interaction, hoping to get some cool goodies and stuff like that. I'm sending every single person a copy of our new sticker, which is actually in line with our new logo, like the theme of it. So every single patron that we have will be getting that sticker. Yeah, and you can get cool stuff, cool merch. And then going forward, we have the postcards where we pick a random case, send you a postcard with a location. You're not sure what case it is. And then we do a case on it. That has been a mess because of everything. That is now getting back on track. So I'm just excited, guys, all the way around. This show is going to be better than ever, more streamlined. And I'm so, 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 so excited to be able to make this my full-time project. I could not do this without all of you patrons, supporters, and listeners. Listeners above everything, all of you. Thank you so very, very much. Also, if you are loving the show, please just go over to iTunes and leave that 5-star review. It helps us more than you know. There's nothing more disheartening than getting a bad review. Apparently, over the last several weeks, I've been accused of violence against women for using the word titty slap. Apparently, I have just opened the gates to hell there by using that word. So apologies to anyone I may have offended. But if those of you who are enjoying the show could go drop a 5-star review, that'd be greatly, greatly appreciated. Alrighty, so there's been a lot of stuff in the news lately. It's been crazy. And yes, I promise that I will have a few Lori Vallow updates for you, episodes. Brittany will be joining me again. And then also Iris, who many of you absolutely loved when she came on. She discussed autopsy. She worked as an autopsy technician for many years, and she came on to discuss the less glamorous aspects of the job, as well as told a few cool stories. She's going to be joining us to do a review on that Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case, Lifetime Network movie. And I don't know how many of you guys saw that, but holy shit. It was just everything that I had hoped for. And first, I would like to say that I am disgusted and appalled that Lifetime even did this movie. Like, it's actually very vile that a large network put out a movie that was so misinformed, so wrong on absolutely everything, and it's offensive to the family members and the victims. I'm not trying to make light of that, but if it was going to happen, it was going to happen, and it was everything that I had hoped that it would be. They got the names of Chad Daybell's children wrong at times. They basically made it seem like Lori was like this little like meek little like housewife who was completely swindled by Chad Daybell. I especially love how they fancied up the garage of like whatever Airbnb they shot that shit in, and they even put a buggy in it, because there's no better way to show that someone is a more fundamentalist like member of the Mormon than by adding a horse and buggy to a garage. Like, I'm unsure. So we'll be discussing that movie and then all of the crazy news out of Chandler, Arizona, and the charges that are going to be brought from Chandler. So a lot is on the horizon, guys. It's just going to be filtered out over the next week or so. For today's episode, we are going to be discussing news that happened this week. A Wisconsin judge has ordered the release of 19-year-old Anissa Wire following a hearing yesterday. Now, for those of you who may not remember, or may even be too young or too old even to recall, here's what happened in this case. It's known as the Slender Man Stabbings. And in the early 2000s, weird horror-themed stories were anonymously getting posted online in various forums, and they would be copied and pasted over and over and over. Hence, you may have heard the term creepypasta. Basically, it's just a creepy story that's been copied and pasted, creepypasta, all over the internet and shared. Now, some of them gained like real traction and became like their own cult status stories. They were copied and pasted hundreds of thousands of times. And fans of these stories would spend hours creating drawings and artwork of the characters. One of the earliest ones, and he is the earliest one, was Ted the Caver. And the stories would come out. They would do like create lore. It was actually a pretty cool thing, not for me, but a lot of teenagers especially got super, super into it. Most of the stories weren't overly gory or graphic, and they would create like little characters and little worlds for these figures. Perhaps the most well-known of these creepypastas is Slender Man. Slender Man, I mean, as a parent, I'm sure you're probably well-versed in Slender Man. If you go to a Halloween store, every single Halloween, they sell his costumes there. There was a video game about Slender Man. He first appeared back in 2009 on the website Something Awful. He looks like a very tall man with a white featureless face. He wears a black suit. Everyone kind of knows him from hiding behind trees. It's very odd, but his popularity skyrocketed. And it's interesting upon doing research on this case that psychiatrists and social studies professors and researchers actually studied the psychological phenomenon about why Slender Man became so popular, what his lure was, why people were so attracted to his character in general. And that's actually a fascinating read, more or less because everything about him is so ambiguous, from what he is, who he is, where he's from, what he does, who he targets. Apparently that just really, really connected with people. Now, Slender Man would usually target adults or young adults in the stories, and as I said, the outcome and what happened to them was always open-ended. I mean, and Slender Man became so popular, so well-known, that again, he ended up spawning that video game, but he also inspired obvious characters on multiple TV shows like Supernatural and Lost Girl. So we're not talking about some like obscure little thing here. So let's go to 2014. In 2014, the creepypasta fan base was starting to diminish a bit. But there were two 12-year-old girls from Wisconsin, Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser, who were rabidly obsessed with Slender Man. And they were best friends with another girl named Peyton. Peyton, however, was not obsessed with Slender Man. But nevertheless, the three of them were inseparable. They did almost everything together. And one day, on May 31st of 2014, the three of them woke up from their sleepover and went to a local park. Anissa and Morgan, unbeknownst to Peyton, had spent 6 months devising a sinister plan. And then they decided that day it was time to put it into action. So they went to the restroom building in the park. They initially planned to knock Peyton unconscious and murder her in the bathroom. Morgan Geyser would later tell the authorities that it would have left a less messy crime scene because there was a floor drain. But apparently they were too nervous and they ended up leaving the bathroom. So they told Peyton that, hey, let's go bird watching. And so they went into the nearby woods that bordered the park. Once in the woods, Anissa Wire said now, and then Morgan Geyser began to stab Peyton repeatedly. They pinned her down, stabbed her 19 times in the arms, legs, and torso with a 5-inch long blade. One stab wound in particular luckily missed one of her major arteries by less than 1 millimeter. However, others went through her diaphragm, cutting into her liver and stomach. It was a brutal, brutal attack that left her with very, very, very critical injuries. However, Peyton slowly dragged herself to the nearby bike path where a cyclist actually drove up on her and then was able to call 911. She lived and was able to tell police what had happened. So both Anissa and Morgan were charged as adults, and they both faced up to 65 years in prison. Both of them entered not guilty pleas by reason of mental disease or defect. Anissa Wire was actually supposed to go on trial first, but at the very, very, very last second, she took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of attempted second-degree intentional homicide. And as a part of that deal, a jury would hear her insanity defense and basically more or less decide whether she was criminally responsible and should be sent to a prison or not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect and sent to a state mental institution. The trial, which was a very sensationalized, very, very big trial, F you, Nancy Grace, for getting everybody all wound up over this one as well. But a jury did, in fact, find her not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. And she was sentenced to 25 years in a state institution. Morgan Geyser, the very, very, very clear and obvious ringleader of this entire fiasco, also made a deal with prosecutors. For her, she pleaded guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide, and prosecutors agreed not to challenge her insanity defense. And Morgan Geyser was therefore sentenced to a 40-year commitment in a state mental institution. And while Morgan Geyser was there, she was actually diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia, which is incredibly, incredibly rare, especially for a woman of her age. And she was a child. And her father has since come forward and said that he also has schizophrenia. Morgan has filed 2 appeals since her conviction and has lost both of them. So why did they try to kill their friend Peyton? Why did they do it? In a nutshell, to appease Slenderman. Investigators, when they ended up searching Morgan's locker at school and also her bedroom, they found dozens of notebooks with art, poetry, stories, all dedicated to Slenderman. They also found lots of dolls that Morgan had ripped the heads and arms off of, mutilated, drawn on, and burned. So, okay. She was a very, 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 very troubled young girl. And it was very clear, not only to investigators, but also pretty much to the world, apparently, that Morgan was, in fact, the ringleader. She was very honest and forthright eventually to the police. She said that she felt no remorse. She said that she thought that she would feel something, and she didn't, that she really didn't care. Pretty much went through the motions, just no emotional response whatsoever. And Peyton made it. It apparently was a very long, hard road due to the organ injuries that she sustained in this attack, but she made it, and she is now living a pretty normal life. So fast forward to last week, and there was actually a hearing for Anissa Wire. And during this hearing, Waukesha County Judge Michael Bowen agreed to release her. She's now 19 years old, and she's been at the Winnebago Mental Health Institute since her sentencing. And initially, she was actually sentenced and scheduled to remain there until age 37. But she has petitioned the court multiple times, and this one apparently was successful. She wrote a letter stating, quote, "By petitioning the court for conditional release, I am not saying I am done with my treatment. I am saying that I have exhausted all the resources available to me at the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. If I am to become a productive member of society, I need to be a part of society." It's unknown. I'm not sure if she has been released or scheduled to release. I didn't see a date on when she will be walking out of the mental institution, but she is being released. And again, she assisted in the planning of it, but she very clearly was not the ringleader. So what do you guys think? Do you think that she should be released? Do you think that she should spend more time in the mental hospital? What do you guys think? But that is a big, big, big piece of news. I think because this case was just so heinously sad and shocking too. You know, a lot of true crime, a lot of it, the lion's share, typically involves men murdering women. You know, that's kind of what we come to expect with the world of true crime as the most part. And much love to, you know, all you men out there. Obviously, you're not all serial killers, but that is a large, overwhelming chunk of true crime. So when two 12-year-old girls scheme for 6 months to kill their best friend, like their absolute best friend, to please a shitty fictional character from an online, it is kind of a big deal. So I hope that she has gotten the mental health assistance and aid that she has needed while she's been there for the last couple of years. And it is definitely going to be a difficult road. So moving on to something that really made me want to fling my computer across the chair and basically burn down the world is Bill Cosby, guys, was released from prison. Cosby served only 3 years of a 10-year sentence in prison after Andrea Constand testified in a criminal case against him that she was drugged and raped by Bill Cosby. Directly after, and well, kind of during it too, if you guys remember the media circus that happened and all of the women that came forward, more than 70 women, 70 women came forward claiming that Bill Cosby drugged and raped them. So why in the hell was he released? It's actually very interesting, and it's not something that I personally have ever seen before. So I think that that's why this is particularly worth noting. Also, that a literal rapist, someone who raped likely like 70 plus women, just, you know, hey, cool, you're good, you can go now. But it's not nearly that simple. His sentence was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court because of an agreement that Bill Cosby had made with then Montgomery County District Attorney Bruce Castor in 2005. Andrea Constand is an all-around freaking rock star. And what happened is that she had brought a civil case against him. The agreement stated that if Bill Cosby sat down for a deposition in a civil case that Constand had brought, that he would then be immune from criminal prosecution. And in that deposition, Bill Cosby admitted to all of it. He admitted to giving quaaludes to women with whom he wanted to have sex. He also admitted to having an insane amount of extramarital affairs. So he more or less raped women, pretty much said, yep, I literally drug women who I want to have sex with, and I'm literally cheating all over my wife everywhere. He admitted to it, guys. It's on audio. It's on video. You can even see it on YouTube. But then in its judgment, and it makes sense, and our justice system actually works, when our legal system actually works, and sometimes it hurts, sometimes justice does not prevail, and this is one of those instances. So in its judgment, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court held that the decision to use Bill Cosby's statements from his deposition against him deprived him of his Fifth Amendment rights. They said that he had been subjected to an unconstitutional, coercive bait and switch, and that his due process was violated. Now, if this was, you know, somebody that I liked that maybe didn't rape almost 100 women, I'd be like, okay. Again, you can't argue. It's a valid reason for him to be removed from prison. But you know what? Fuck Bill Cosby. May he get crotch crickets. May he step like continuously on Legos. May his pasta always be disgustingly cold. I don't know, but just like fuck Bill Cosby. May he rot. And moving on, we have Allison Mack. Most of you, probably almost all of you, are familiar with Allison because about a year ago, we all went through the rabid NXIVM period where we were obsessed with NXIVM. HBO and all of these shows ended up dropping these documentary series on NXIVM and Keith Raniere. So Allison Mack was basically Keith Raniere's wing woman. She was right at the top, not his equal, but like he used her to recruit women into NXIVM, whom then he would go on to groom and sexually abuse. Allison would also assist in bringing them to the branding. That's the big controversial piece. Allison Mack would actually assist in getting these women branded with the initials of Keith Raniere. So on Wednesday, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison and a $20,000 fine. It shocked a lot of people. A lot of people were not really aware that it would be that low, because it is far below the federal sentencing guidelines of 14 to 17 years. However, it also came out that she basically brought all the receipts. She came forward and gave investigators audio recordings of Keith Raniere, emails, photographs. I mean, so much evidence. And if you recall, Keith Raniere's ego was like the size of the planet. And he loved having his own words recorded. And so all the walks that all of the upper level members would go on with him, she would record it. She would record all of her walks. She would record him in the house when they would sit down and have conversations. She would record phone calls. So she had ungodly amount of material to assist in his prosecution. He's basically going to die in prison. Watch a documentary, read up on the story if you want to understand how all of that went down. But yeah, Keith Raniere is basically going to die in prison, as he should. And because we are already over 30 minutes in, guys, I just want to talk about a case that's actually a big deal locally to me. And some of you may have actually heard of it. It took place roughly 30 minutes away from me in a little town called Dixon, Tennessee. Well, it finally went to trial, and a couple weeks ago, we received a verdict. The case involves 5-year-old Joe Clyde Daniels, who became known to the world as Baby Joe. He was nonverbal and autistic, and unfortunately endured unspeakable abuse during his short time on this earth. The case began on April 4th of 2019 at roughly 9 p.m. 5-year-old Baby Joe and his 8-year-old half-brother Alex were sleeping in a bedroom, and Baby Joe woke up and urinated on the floor. So Alex ended up going to alert his parents, naturally. Their mother, Crystal Daniels, was asleep in another room. Her husband, 28-year-old Joseph Daniel, Baby Joe's father, was sitting in the living room. Both parents responded to check on the children. Now, I'll be referring to Baby Joe as either Baby Joe or Joe, and his father as Joseph, just to keep them separate. So Joseph came in and brutally beat Joe. But the two young boys ended up going back to sleep, and everything seemed normal. It's worth noting that their mother, Crystal, witnessed the beating, but said nothing, didn't help her son, and ended up going back to sleep in her bedroom. In the middle of the night, Alex was woken up by a loud bang. And on the stand, he ended up testifying when this went to trial. And on the stand, he described how he was terrified, but eventually went outside into the living room. And he saw his brother, Baby Joe, motionless on the ground. He then witnessed Joseph pick Baby Joe up, throw him over his shoulder, and walk out of the back door. Alex silently followed him. Joseph placed Baby Joe on the ground and then finally noticed that Alex was watching him. And Alex claimed that he threatened to kill him if he did not help him. So Alex then walked over to their car, opened it, pulled the lever for the trunk to open it, and went back inside. Now, that to me was heartbreaking. Imagine for a moment that you're 8 years old and you literally see your younger brother dead in front of you. Your father has him carrying him outside, throws him on the ground. It's like, help me or I'm going to kill you. And at 8 years old, your first instinct is to open the trunk. To me, that says everything that I need to know about what kind of parents they were, what kind of environment that they were living in. And it is just heinously sad. So Alex went back inside after he opened the car and trunk, and he watched as Joseph just carried Baby Joe down the driveway. He didn't actually use the car. So Alex went inside and he went back to bed. And the next morning when he woke up, Joseph told him that Baby Joe had run away. And later that morning, a couple hours later, Joseph Daniels ended up calling 911 to report Baby Joe missing. And let's listen to that 911 call now. I tried to clean up the audio for this a little bit. It was in really bad shape. The call quality is absolutely terrible. I tried to clean it up so that it would not puncture your eardrums. So it sounds better, but it's not 100%. So let's listen to this call.
Where is your emergency?
This is Nixon County 911.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was on, and my son has escaped, and we cannot find him.
Okay, how old is your son, sir?
He is 5.
Okay, you said he lived.
He has autism. Yes.
Okay, and you said he has autism?
Yes.
Okay, how long ago was he last seen?
Last night.
Okay, all right. And what's his name?
His name is Joe.
What's his last name?
Daniels.
What was he wearing last night?
He was wearing pajamas.
What kind of pajamas? What do they look like?
So my wife would know better than I would on that.
Okay. And do you know how he got out of the house?
He must have unlocked the door.
Okay.
And he got out.
What's his date of birth?
7/30/12.
Okay, sir. And you said his name was Joe. What was his last name?
Daniels.
Daniel.
Yes.
Okay. And what's your last name, sir?
Daniels.
Okay, what's your first name?
Joseph.
All right, Joseph. And what does he look like?
He's got blonde hair, and blue eyes.
Okay.
And,
Okay, blonde hair, blue eyes. Anything else? How tall is he?
he's about, I would say about 3.5, 4 feet tall.
4 feet tall. How much does he weigh?
65 pounds.
65 pounds. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know anywhere where he would go from your house?
I do not know, because we don't know any of the names except for one neighbor. So I do not know where he would have gone.
Okay. Is he nonverbal or is he verbal?
He's nonverbal.
Nonverbal.
Yes.
So after this call came in, there was an area-wide manhunt for baby Joe. Volunteers scoured the area trying to find him. They brought in volunteers. I got a notification on my phone for it. I remember when I got the notification on my phone for it. They could not find Joe Clyde. And in a grotesque example of irony, 2 days later, on April 6th, Joseph Daniels was administered a polygraph test. And this fucker actually showed up to the polygraph test with a blue t-shirt with the words "Super Dad" printed across it. And in this interrogation, he admitted to hitting 5-year-old baby Joe with a closed fist several times in the head and a few times in the face. And then on April 7th, the community-wide search for baby Joe, who at this point, I mean, this had made international news at this point, so he was known as Baby Joe at this point going forward. The community search came to an end because Joseph Daniels had confessed to killing him and hiding his body, taking it to a remote area. So investigators announced his confession at a news conference, and Joseph Daniels was arrested and charged with criminal homicide. At this point, he was kept in the Dixon County Jail on $1 million bond. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, what about his mother? Well, baby Joe's mother, Crystal Daniels, admitted to TBI investigators that she had been present when Joseph beat baby Joe. And on April 10th, she was also arrested and charged with aggravated child neglect or endangerment and also held on $1 million bond. During all this time, they're both in jail, right? Neither Joseph nor Crystal would say where baby Joe's body was buried. Crystal's like, I don't know. I didn't do it. And Joseph kept telling them random places in the woods near his house. But regardless of how many times they interviewed or interrogated him, He just would not provide information that assisted them in finding baby Joe's body and recovering it. So the recovery efforts for Joe's remains continued through May, but everything was inconclusive. Now, on June 4th, 2019, both Joseph and Crystal Daniels appeared for a preliminary court hearing before it was then moved to the Dickson County Grand Jury. Crystal Daniels was indicted on counts of criminal responsibility, aggravated child neglect, and filing a false report. Joseph Ray Daniels was indicted on counts of first-degree murder, felony murder, aggravated child abuse, filing a false report, and tampering with evidence. Not to be ableist, but neither Crystal nor Joseph are bright people. They are more or less walking examples of why we need birth control, and somehow they just slipped into the gene pool when the lifeguard was off duty or not watching. And that's fine, I guess, because it also means that they were both ridiculous and made ridiculous mistakes that ended up helping investigators. A mysterious letter arrived at the home of Joseph Daniels' parents. It was from Joseph Daniels. In that letter, he claimed that Joe Clyde, baby Joe, was still alive and that another man was involved with Joe's disappearance. He said that he believed that Crystal packed up baby Joe's clothes, put them into a bag, and then left Joe on the side of the road. Like, he claims that Crystal was having an affair and she just decided to pluck baby Joe up and just leave him on the side of the road. Now, it's important to note that this is the first time that he squarely put blame on his wife. And you guessed it, Joseph recanted his confession and claimed that he had been coerced into giving the initial one by investigators. So the pair sit and rot in jail for the next few months while investigators try their damnedest to recover the remains of baby Joe. And then on July 1st of 2019, there was a recorded jailhouse phone call between Joseph Daniels and his father. And this phone call recorded Joseph saying that Crystal smothered baby Joe with a pillow and that she had made a threat on baby Joe's life before. Again, he's like, my wife did it. First, she packed his shit and left him on the side of the road. Now she smothered him. He's repeatedly telling people, including his cellmate, that his wife, Crystal, is the one who killed baby Joe. So on May 21st of 2020, we're fast forwarding a year, now we're in May of 2020, investigators from the Dickson County Sheriff's Office obtained a search warrant to dig along the Daniels family's backyard fence. TBI had pulled security footage from a nearby home and discovered that a car had never traveled or left the property the night that baby Joe had disappeared. So, putting two and two together, that led them to believe that he had taken and or buried baby Joe somewhere on the property. Investigators pulled cell phone data from the morning of baby Joe's disappearance, and they were able to use the GPS coordinates to show that Joseph Daniels had moved all around his property. Does that ring a bell to another case we're covering here? But they were able to actually pinpoint it. So investigators descended upon the family home. And there that day in the woods, they found 26 bones and bone fragments along with a bag containing a hacksaw. However, that's it. That's all they have is the 26 bones and bone fragments. Baby Joe's full body, his full remains have never, to this day, been recovered. His father and mother will not tell investigators where they are. So now let's fast forward again, and we're in 2021, just a couple months ago. Back in April, we had the hearings for both Crystal and Joseph. During Joseph's hearing, the district attorney played 4 different confessions that he had given and then shortly thereafter recanted. He also brought forth multiple witness statements from witnesses who had driven by the Daniels property the morning that baby Joe went missing. 3 different people claimed to have seen Joseph Daniels walking that morning on the side of the road. Last month, on June 1st, the jury selection process began. The jury pool was taken from Chattanooga, a city roughly 4 hours away from Dickson, 3.5, 4 hours away from Dickson. Because so many people were reading media on this case, getting local news alerts and so forth, they actually went outside of the general area and went to East Tennessee, whereas Dickson is solidly in Middle Tennessee. They were able to get jurors who had never heard of the case or even the name Baby Joe. So the trial began on Thursday, June 3rd. They wasted no time. And there were two big key moments from the trial, which I have watched the whole thing. The first is that the prosecution brought now 11-year-old Alex, Baby Joe's half-brother, though the one who witnessed the event, to testify. He was incredibly emotional. He had to take multiple breaks, and he testified that his father threatened to kill him if he did not help move Baby Joe. That's why he opened the car trunk and all of that, and why he said that he saw his father walking down the driveway with Baby Joe as opposed to driving away. That was actually a very important piece. The second moment was, interestingly enough, affair news related to Crystal. Now, I'm not trying to shame her, but she's not exactly the prettiest lady. She's not exactly, conventional. And all I'm saying is that I'm mad that I can't even get a text back from people that I like. And then she's like having an affairs and is getting fan mail in jail. I'm just saying. So when TBI agents pulled all of the electronic devices from the family, those included Joseph and Crystal's phones, their computers, as well as 8-year-old Alex's tablet. You see, back in February of 2018, 2 months before Baby Joe's murder, Crystal had accepted a friend request from someone by the name of Thomas Richards. He was from Wichita, Kansas, where Crystal is originally from, and also where her mother currently resides. Apparently, she was actually previously in a romantic relationship with Mr. Thomas Richards. They had a sexual and romantic relationship when she lived in Wichita, Kansas. And she used Alex's tablet to exchange sexually explicit Facebook and text messages with Thomas. She even said, quote, "I haven't been happy for the last 3 years. If it tells you anything, I ripped up our marriage license and I went and had the papers drawn up, and all that has to be done is him sign them. And then the papers will have to be filed with the court." So she was being very sexual with Thomas, saying, "I love you," saying she was going to leave Joseph, that she had actually already filed the paperwork, gotten the paperwork drawn up, and that she was going to be out. And with this new information regarding the affair, obviously now we have a potential motive, right? There have been countless murders that have happened when one spouse says that they want a divorce or finds out that their spouse is cheating on them. I mean, it is just a huge, huge, huge trigger for a lot of different awful things. Telling your spouse you want a divorce, depending, can be incredibly dangerous. We have a new motive potentially. And this was confirmed when investigators also unearthed repeated searches on Joseph Daniels' phones for parental DNA tests. So they had a series of motives here that were introduced into the Joseph Daniels trial. And apparently the jury agreed. So the jury found Daniels not guilty of first-degree murder, but guilty of first-degree murder in perpetration of a felony, aggravated child abuse, tampering with evidence, and initiating a false report. Crystal Daniels' trial is yet to be scheduled, but she has been in the Dixon County Jail this entire time. And the news has been doing interviews with her and the whole bit, and she just will not shut her mouth. After watching her husband's trial, Joseph's trial from jail, she did an interview with News Channel 5 here in Nashville, and she said that she doesn't believe her husband killed their son and that her 5-year-old autistic nonverbal child escaped or was abducted. I'm just like, honey child, you're not getting picked. He's throwing you under the bus for this. He is throwing you under the bus for his murder and saying that you did it. So I just don't understand why she's like, no, he didn't do it. I just do not understand for the life of me if it's denial, mental illness. She just can't understand. I don't understand it. But yeah, so Crystal Daniels is out here saying that her husband didn't do it, that it was someone random. He did it. And he's blaming her, and it's just a mess. It is a hot, hot mess. So that's it today, guys, for the few news pieces that I have. I had a lot more on my list that I wanted to get through, but an hour is kind of pushing it for content, So that is it for today. So again, to recap our housekeeping, this is now going to be a full-time project. I love all of you. Thank you for listening. The show will now have episodes drop every Tuesday and Thursday with 100% guarantee and certainty. If you were previously a patron or are a current patrons, I'm getting you taken care of. But if you were a patron and left and you didn't receive a welcome package, merch, sticker, t-shirt, something, please, 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 please reach out to me. Let me know. I'm can't sleep at night because I feel so freaking terrible for like the hellacious time that I have had and that I let it affect this podcast. So reach out to us at info@wesawthedevil.com. And if you have liked the show, love the show, please subscribe and please consider dropping by iTunes and taking 3 seconds to leave a 5-star review. So next week, we will be having an episode on the Sidney Loof case, which, guys, that is quite literally my worst nightmare. It is heinous and horrible and it is just absolutely awful. But there is an update in the Sidney Loof case that I followed very closely when it happened, and I would like to do an update episode on it. And then we have all the Lori Vallow stuff coming forward and a lot of cool, interesting, weird things heading your way. So again, check us out at wesawthedevil.com. We Saw the Devil across social media, and our Patreon, patreon.com/We Saw the Devil. Until next crime.